All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. So, I guess last week we covered the story about how the Attorney General responded to a request for an opinion on whether or not there is a penalty for carrying a concealed handgun without a license. There was a letter written some 6 months ago by Senator Linda Colin Smith asking the Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, if she could, focus solely on the question in the law, is there a penalty for carrying a weapon without a permit? And the Attorney General responded finally last week. Here with reaction, we have Senator Linda Colin Smith on the line. Linda, welcome back to the program, and good morning to you.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing, Paul?
I am doing well. I'm doing very well. I first of all, just want to say that I really appreciate you asking for this opinion some 6 months ago, because I think everybody knows that you were trying to get the government to acknowledge the Second Amendment freedoms that we have, basically a decriminalization of possession of a weapon here in the state of Arkansas. So I thank you so much for that, Senator Linda Colin Smith.
Thank you very much. I had to chuckle there and laugh. That 6 months ago, I sure did. And I appreciate that. I can tell you that's probably the most, on Facebook and social media of all kinds that I've and probably called about, and people that have ran into me have probably asked me about that opinion more than anything that I have talked about. Has she answered that question yet? And they really want to know. Mm-hmm. And of course she had not. And I even felt like that I had I called it protected the Attorney General and tried to make sure that people were respectful. As I requested the opinion, I have a job to do, and so does the General. As a legislator, I understand that we get very busy, and I know that she has had a lot of things that she's worked on out of state. Multiple times we, had, the death penalty issues going on and some serious things. So I have worked very hard to make sure that people were respectful, and I really wanted to give benefit of the doubt in whether or not that opinion would come out for the primaries. And of course it did not. Mm-hmm. And so it was very frustrating and very hard to continue to stand up and have hope that she would go ahead and come out. It's very hard to continue to stand up for that.
Let's take the beginning of this. This is the beginning of her opinion, and I'll get you to respond. She writes, mm-hmm. You have requested my opinion as to whether there is a provision of Arkansas law that expressly provides a penalty for carrying a concealed handgun without a license. There is no such provision. Now, Linda, I'd be great if the opinion just ended right there, but it doesn't.
That was enough.
What's your reaction to that first sentence?
Well, after reading that, when I first opened that opinion, and I have to say this, I need the time to say it to everyone that's listening. After reading that opinion, and I saw and read a little farther, I had to shut that computer off. I had to turn it off. I couldn't read the rest of it. I could not believe that was the response that I got. I could believe I might get something else, but not that response. Mm-hmm. I absolutely was, I don't think frustrated, maybe sick, but frustrated might be the answer, but I had to wait a little bit to reread it after waiting that many months to get the response that I got. I couldn't believe she was joining the governor in her confusion in the response. So that being said, the first sentence is, and maybe the second one where it says there is no
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us on this July 3rd. Right before we celebrate Independence Day, we take 24 hours off, and really excited about that. I have a 19-pound beef brisket that is marinating right now in my refrigerator, so I'm excited to get that onto the smoker at some point today. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program, you can call or text that number. That's 870-275-9799. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking with Mr. R.D. Hopper, Arkansas business owner of Sonny's Auto Salvage. We're going to be talking with him about the tire tax regulations. The reason we're going to be doing that is because it's back in the news. The Legislative Council has been meeting on this important issue about how do we now implement the tire tax law and regulate tires through a cradle-to-grave tire tracking system. And wouldn't you know, the government is still arguing that they need to be involved and they must keep your tires away from water. They're arguing now that water coming in contact with tires is an environmental hazard because of mosquitoes. That's right. They want to protect us from the Zika virus. They're very, very worried about this, very worried about mosquitoes. And now, I know mosquitoes are really bad right now, but is that really an excuse for the government to regulate tires? I don't think so. I think this is a mess. And we're going to have Mr. R.D. Hopper on to talk about that. Then we're going to be talking with Mr. Dan Wass. He's going to come on the program at 7:33 this morning. And excited to have him back on the program. And, of course, he is an author. He's got 2 books out now that have to do with Second Amendment rights. You've probably seen it. It's a Good Gun, Bad Guy. That's the name of his book, Good Gun, Bad Guy, which, of course, is completely counter to the narrative that you hear on the left. We're going to have fun. I want to talk to him specifically about, the American Revolution and folks. I mean, if our founding fathers didn't have their Second Amendment rights to throw off a tyrannical government, we would not be enjoying the benefits that we enjoy today in our society. Again, the number 870-275-9799. I would like to start this morning with John Brummett's column that's out a couple hours ago. I've tried to analyze, John Brummett is, for the most part, he is complimentary to Governor Asa Hutchinson, and it's very, very strange the way he does this. Sometimes John Brummett, again, a liberal columnist, John Brummett, he likes to set up like he's going to criticize Asa Hutchinson. I mean, he's supposed to, right? He's supposed to criticize him. He's the liberal, but he never quite can get a good punch in. He always has to kind of pull his punches, or in many cases, he compliments the governor because he says he's a pragmatic leader, or he's a moderate Republican, or a progressive leadership, whatever. And I just find that odd, and I find that is the elephant in the room. There's a lot of elephants in the room in this particular piece that he's written. We'll get to that here in a minute. But the elephant in the room for Arkansas Republicans is the fact that on a national scale, right, the press can't say a positive thing. The mainstream media can't say a positive thing about Republicans, especially Donald Trump. But that is not the case here in Arkansas. What about that doesn't make sense? Or why is that the case? And I think it's because you have progressive-minded people in the media that know the direction the state of Arkansas is continuing to head, despite changing the color of our T-shirts from blue to red. Just a thought. Let's read this article because the reason this is interesting to me is because, according to John Brummett here, he got into a direct message thread, started a conversation with the governor himself about whether or not the governor should call for resignations of certain politicians. Now, now, I know what you're thinking. Jeremy Hutchinson, right? The guy who, according to the federal court documents in the Western District of Missouri, has been accused of taking $500,000 in bribes from Preferred Family Health Care, who just got their contracts, by the way, pulled. They're no longer getting taxpayer dollars, which is a really good thing. A headline here, Embracing Due Process. They're not talking about Jeremy Hutchinson, though. They're talking about Mickey Gates. Last week, news broke that State Representative Mickey Gates hasn't filed a state tax return in like 14 years. I mean, it was an amazing story. I can't believe that this happened, and it's a terrible situation because I'm wondering why State Representative Mickey Gates ever ran for office in the first place, knowing that this was he's only a two-term legislator, right? I mean, his first term was in 2015. Why, if you haven't paid taxes since, 2007? Like, why would you do this? Or is it, I think it's even before that. The constitutional right to due process, John Brummett writes, refers primarily to procedural rights in defending oneself in a legal matter. It does not extend to a supposed right to remain a state legislator while charged with not paying state income taxes. Now, does that same, I would agree with that. Does that same standard apply, though, or that same idea apply to Jeremy Hutchinson? Yet the Arkansas Republican Party seems more interested in keeping one of its own seated in the legislature after such an arrest than in extending similar sensitivity to, say, a poor person on Medicaid who fails to verify he's been looking for work. So here comes John Brummett. He's winding up. He's winding up for a punch. He's going to hit Asa on his so-called work requirements. Can you feel it? Here it comes. It's going to be a big punch. He goes on. We should indulge with sensitivity, the Republican legislator accused in state police documents of not filing an income tax return since 2005. At 2005. The state GOP says. But we should jerk health insurance from the poor man on Medicaid who didn't check a computer box to declare that he'd been trying to find a job. This same state GOP also says. By the way, is that all you have to do? You have to log on to a computer and check a box and you're good to go? Pretty much. Pretty much. It's that simple. He goes on, I made those observations, John Brummett does, Friday on Twitter in the matter of State Representative Mickey Gates of Hot Springs. In doing so, I managed to engage both the Democratic candidate for governor, Jared Henderson, and the Republican incumbent he opposes, Governor Asa Hutchinson. Did Jared Henderson oppose Asa Hutchinson when he gave his nonprofit $2 million because of a piece of legislation that Jeremy Hutchinson passed? I'm just curious. I know they oppose each other now, but did they oppose one another when that little deal was going down? Just an honest question. John Brummett writes, first, Henderson, the Democrat, wrote, "It gets better," by which I'm certain he meant worse. The poor person can only provide the proof via the web while living in a state that's ranked 49th in internet connectivity, but at least we are going the extra mile to accommodate the lawmaker who has already admitted not filing a tax return for years. That evening, Hutchinson replied on Twitter, "It had been a long day for the governor. He and Henderson and the Libertarian Party candidate Mark West had debated earlier in Eureka Springs at the Arkansas Press Association convention. I make note of that in the context of the governor's having needed slight editing on his post, which said, quote, one could argue that due process is something a poor person and even a Republican should receive. That is probably a liberal position, so it seems your progressive tendencies has limits. The governor should have written, Brummett says, tendencies have or tendency has, but perhaps I nitpick. That is about all John Brummett can do to disagree with Asa is criticize his grammar in a tweet. That is about all John Brummett can do to disagree with the Republican governor. Hutchinson's point was that the poor person gets due process considering that he doesn't lose Medicaid coverage the first month he fails to make it to a computer for his requisite click at the appropriate portal. Coverage is lost after 3 monthly failures to report without a hearing. The governor's further point, John Brummett writes, was that a true liberal-minded person ought to advocate extending the same indulgence even to a Republican legislator. Brummett says he replied to the governor that he should read my full Twitter tirade to see that I'd explained that while he and Republicans couldn't force Gates out without due process, they could invite him out with a public nudge. Again, no mention of the governor's nephew yet, who's accused of taking $500,000 in bribes. I've got to make my point that I made on Friday, which is Mickey Gates was trying to keep his own money. Mickey Gates is accused of keeping his own money that he made, that he generated. Jeremy Hutchinson is accused of stealing ours. I think there's a little bit of a difference there. Right? I think there's a little bit of a difference there. I mean, I know that you had the chair of the Democrat Party, Michael John Gray, Arkansas Democrat Party. He was saying the public, when the Mickey Gates stuff happened, he was saying the public corruption continues. Now, whoa. I mean, I know State Representative Mickey Gates is a state representative, and it's terrible. Honestly, I don't know why he ran for office if he hadn't filed taxes. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't think you put that in the same corruption category as you do these other guys who have been stealing from the taxpayers, who have been crafting schemes to take money from the government, which is the government doesn't have any money. It's our money. I think it's a little different. I don't know about you, just a tad different. Holding onto your own money versus stealing taxpayer money. Now, you could make the argument that that money belonged to the taxpayers. He's not paying. He's not following the law. Yeah, I get that. Again, I'm just making a slight, I don't know. I think there's a difference there. But, I mean, it's all bad. We can agree that. We can agree that it's all bad 100%. Again, no mention of Jeremy Hutchinson yet in this article. Find that odd. Find that very strange. He's talking about a public nudge. So they need to force Gates out. They can't force Gates out, but they could invite him out with a public nudge. Well, I guess, the reason maybe Asa is not doing that, maybe they're not doing that because they know they would look like big hypocrites because they haven't done that for the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson. John Brummett writes, all of that led me to get in touch with Hutchinson by private message. And that's not so private because he's posted the message and the communication here in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. All of this led me to get in touch with Hutchinson via private message to seek further explanation. I pointed out that he'd previously said legislators shouldn't be called on to resign unless federally indicted, which he has. Here, Gates faced a state arrest. What gave? Federal versus state. The governor replied at length, and I will quote his response in full. All of what he wrote was interesting and I think revelatory as to his lawyer-influenced thinking that I must say may be as principled as partisan. He wrote, quote, this is from the governor to John Brummett via private message, quote, I am glad Kay Bailey Hutchinson and Rick Perry did not resign after they were charged in state court by a Democratic prosecutor on accusations later dismissed. Now stop. Is Mickey Gates being charged by a Democratic prosecutor here? This was an investigation that was referred to law enforcement by ASA's Department of Finance and Administration. Anyway, he goes on, I regret what happened to Alaska Senator Ted Stevens when the federal prosecutors unethically pursued him. He was convicted, defeated for re-election, and then cleared on Justice Department findings of prosecutorial abuse. It is hard to apply general rules, but I did not call for the resignation of Democratic Senator Paul Bookout based on ethical violation charges. Why not? I did not call for the resignation of President Clinton. Public officials should use their own good judgment and resign when their work is undermined, but I have always been hesitant about making a judgment on limited facts. By the way, did you call for the resignation of Governor Jim Guy Tucker when he was indicted? Regardless, Representative Gates should step aside just to focus on his responsibilities, but we should not prejudge everything. And that's the end of the message. John Brummett writes, I did not call for Tucker's resignation. I did call for Clinton's. Was the governor's conclusion that Gates ought to resign by personal choice, but that he would not call or ask for it? That seems to be what the governor is saying here. That he should step aside, but they're not going to force him or they're not going to publicly nudge him. That is fair, he replied. I may call for it at some point, but hopefully he will handle the public trust in the right way. Exactly. And that is how one embraces due process, John Brummett writes, with one hand and nudges with the other. You'll notice the governor isn't calling or even asking for anything. He's just saying. The governor is in an interesting spot here because of his nephew. I mean, if he were to call outright for the resignation of Mickey Gates for not paying income taxes since 2005 or filing a state income tax, how in the world could he do that without calling for the resignation of his nephew? I mean, I'm sure there's a way. As Dr. Ian Malcolm says, life finds a way. I'm sure in the world of politics, they could figure out a way to spin that and call for one and not call for the other. But right now, they haven't figured that out yet. They've got mathematicians working on the political equation as we speak. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
its mother government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are 2 matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Some of these comments are hilarious. Are you reading these comments on Facebook, Joe? They're really funny. Gene is saying, let this be a lesson. If you were a practicing Republican, meaning an actual Republican that believes in the platform, if you were a practicing Republican in Arkansas, you better not get caught jaywalking. And then he goes on to say, if you're taking bribes, kickbacks, and World Series box seats while being the governor's nephew, John Brummett will French kiss you. Let's see, Tim, failing to pay taxes is stealing, yet taking $500,000 in bribes. That's pretty good. Governor Asa Hutchinson could not debate Jan Morgan because he was busy direct messaging John Brummett on Twitter? ? Good stuff. We're broadcasting live over at Facebook.com/Conduit News. That's Facebook.com/Conduit News. I'm going to get to this here in just a moment, but there is a slight correction on the Conduit for Action piece from yesterday. Notice the title is a little different. The Forgotten Ethics Law now has a parentheses, and it says not so forgotten. And it's been updated if you go to the end of the article. And I'll make you aware of that. We're up against a hard break right now, so I can't really give the correction, but I'll do that. And then, folks, I'm going to have to get just a little early. I'm going to have to get to some of this tire text. I got to read from you some of these quotes from these tire regulations now, I guess. They've got the taxes, right? They've been collecting the tire taxes now. Now it's time for the regulations to save tires and save us from having tires come in contact with water. That's an environmental hazard now, according to the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. You'd think we've just been invaded by mosquitoes for the first time ever, you know. So I've got to get to that here in a little bit, and then also a little bit more about ethics. And then again, we're going to have Mr. Artie Hopper coming up at 7:05 and Dan Wass coming up at 7:33. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back in just a moment.
No provision should have been enough. And that would have answered my question and made it very clear. Her confusion is certainly something I didn't expect.
Yeah, because, she goes on to really muddy the water. She says it's not clear whether carrying a concealed handgun without a license will expose a citizen to conviction for the offense of carrying a weapon. She goes on to argue that a prosecutor might say that carrying a concealed handgun without a license may be construed as an attempt to unlawfully employ it against another person. So there is and that to me is so contrived. I mean, there's a reason prosecutors across this state won't prosecute anybody that's falsely arrested on this thing, and everybody knows it. But to admit that fact would devastate the Arkansas State Police budget, is what I think she's protecting.
Well, that right there is probably. I think that the general might want to. I might want to send this back. Of course, that's probably my plan. I have to give you and her a heads up this morning, because the prosecutors, if that were the case, and I'll have to tell you, I remember when the governor sent his letter to the colonel of the state police, Colonel Bryant. Colonel Bryant can read the law, and the state police have not had a problem. And I was embarrassed, I have to tell you. I have to say this, and I have to say to the general, I have to tie these two things together right now, because I'm disappointed that she's so confused, because you see, the colonel can read, and they understand the law. We've not had a problem with the state police wrongfully out there going and arresting people. And we've not had prosecutors wrongfully prosecuting people. And they don't have a problem from county to county misinterpreting the laws either. And if we were having such a problem with them misunderstanding the laws, and see, the legislators have this law just like we have wanted it, we do not have a problem with this in the Constitution. I think we've got these laws just like we like it. But because the governor has a problem now with his confusion, and he's sent out a letter to Colonel Bryant and is confusing the people more, and now we get this letter back from the AG, I can tell you very clearly, the prosecutors that we contacted a few years ago and asked the prosecutor.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you want to call or text the program, I'm getting a call right now. People are fired up about these corrupt politicians. People saying, I like this, Gene. He says, when will Leslie Rutledge and her FBI crime task force, he calls it a task force. When will they get around to rounding up criminal politicians? It would look like a cattle drive. City Slickers, that movie with Billy Crystal? Both of them, City Slickers 1 and 2, are some great movies. They really are. Okay, let's get to this correction real quick, if you haven't seen this. And I want to draw attention to, again, David Ferguson's just amazing legal mind and his memory, being the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research and working there for 30 years. I mean, he has just an amazing memory and focus. But his headline now reads, "The Forgotten Ethics Law Not So Forgotten." And, of course, this talks about the names of executives of Preferred Family Health Care who had also been former employees of the Department of Human Services, how they're getting all these jobs. So he's essentially saying, look, this ethics law in contracting would ensnare, because it's the ethics law in contracting is not just about commodities, it's also about services, and Medicaid's a service. And so these ex-employees don't need to be doing what they're doing and getting these huge jobs after they work for the government, for these private companies, so-called private companies that are funded by taxpayer money, right? At the end of the article, there's an update. You scroll down and look at the end of the article here, Joe. For our online audience, kudos to the Office of State Procurement. After approving this article for release, I found an example where the Office of State Procurement raised concerns over contract because of the involvement of a former state employee. By the time the contract came up for review in the Legislative Council's review subcommittee, in review in January of this year, the former state employee had been fired by the company. Can you guess the name of the company? If you guessed Preferred Family Healthcare, you're right. The former employee, by the name of Charles Green, had been director of the Human Services Department, the Human Services Department's Behavioral Health Services Division. The Office of State Procurement was concerned he was in a position of control of Preferred Family Health Care. I hate to post anything that is not correct. Ethics in contracting is still a law of which few are aware and deserves to be reviewed for possible improvement and enforcement with Green, Robin, Ravindran, and I know people are saying I'm pronouncing it wrong. I don't care. I like to say Ravindran. And other former DHS employees landing jobs at PFH. A review of the law seems appropriate. Here's the thing. I think it's fantastic that David brings up this little-known law, number one, and it's great that the procurement office is looking at this, but it's still a very little-known law. They might have applied it to Charles Green, and they're aware of it, which is good. But how many legislators are aware of this law? How many are they? How many of them are aware of this and actively, this whole idea of self-reporting? They could all be, just so you know, that the next time you hear anything about these ethics rules or these new ethics about we got to self-report or we got to turn our own senator in that we just saw down the hall or whatever at the Marble Palace, they could be doing that now. They could be making phone calls to law enforcement. They could be making phone calls to the Arkansas Ethics Commission. They could be doing a lot of this stuff now, and they don't. You know why? Well, they don't want to be ostracized. I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the... Well, what do they say on the streets? Snitch, right? I'm no rat. I don't want to be a snitch. I mean, if you don't... Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. If a vast majority down there are corrupt or they have their legal grift, if you will. Hang on, I've always got this right here. I'm going to make my point, but this is a book, Republic No More. We've gone over this a lot. It's a great book. If you never read it, it's by Jay Cost, and that picture on the front is my favorite. You see that big statue there? Look, it's the senator at the very, very top. Look where the people are. They're being crushed by this pedestal. So, at the very beginning of this book, you don't get too far in, and you discover that there's a great story about this whole situation. I think that covers Arkansas very well. It talks about a guy by the name of George Washington Plunkett, who was a boss for New York City's Tammany Hall, about 100 years ago. And it's a quote from him about the different kind of corruption. You can have honest corruption or you can have dishonest corruption. This calls it dishonest graft or honest graft, if you will. The quote is this: everybody's Everybody is talking these days about Tammany men growing rich on graft, but nobody thinks of drawing the distinction between honest graft and dishonest graft. There's all the difference in the world between the two. I've not gone in for dishonest graft, blackmailing, gamblers, saloon keepers, disorderly people, etc. And neither has any of the men who've made big fortunes in politics. There's an honest graft, and I'm an example of how it works. I might sum up the whole thing by saying, I seen my opportunities and I took them. Just let me explain my examples, this quote goes on. My party's in power in the city, and it's going to undertake a lot of public improvements. Well, I'm tipped off, say, and they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I see my opportunity and I take it. I go to that place, I buy up all the land I can in the neighborhood, then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there's a rush to get my land, which nobody cared particular for before. End quote. Now, Jake Host writes, there was nothing honest about Plunkett's fraud, but he was on to something in drawing the distinction. Dishonest graft is criminal activity that harms people directly, whereas honest graft is technically legal and the victim is the common good. If most of the people at the Marble Palace, or most of the people in positions of power, are, let's just say, morally questionable, ethically questionable, do you not think that if you go to turn your colleague in, that you're going to be ostracized or punished in some way? I mean, think about this for a second. We are being asked to believe that the culture is changing at the Marble Palace. They want to take ethics seriously, right? And they want to encourage their members to snitch on each other. Trust us, it's going to be fine. This is coming from the same Hutchinson-Hendren alliance, if you will, that actively targeted the two Republicans that stood out and talked out about the ethical problems down there, Linda Colin Smith and Brian King, who were defeated. I mean, do you not think that if you were to file some sort of ethics complaint with the ethics committee, you might get a primary opponent? Okay, well, just hear me out. Hear me out. That would at least cross your mind. If you're a Republican, especially, and you're going to be snitching on another Republican, raising these questions with the ethics committee, do you not think it would cross your mind that if you get too far up the tree that somebody in the Republican Party, the governor, may find a primary opponent for you? I mean, we've seen this. It happens every cycle, the last two cycles. You know, you saw it with Josh Miller, and you saw it with all the people that had primary opponents this time. I mean, I'm just, somebody tell me how the new ethics rules are going to change that power structure or change the incentive structure. Somebody tell me how that's going to, or do people just, I don't know, is the leadership just more benevolent now? They're going to stop primarying people who are Republicans that have more conservative ideas than they do? Is that going to stop now all of a sudden? I mean, they probably wouldn't tell you, but every person down there, whether you've got a good voting record or a bad voting record from a Republican Party platform standpoint, everyone down there, if they did something like this, would think, it would cross their mind, if I file this complaint in this ethics committee, am I going to have a primary the next time I run for office? Anyway, just take that into consideration. Now, speaking of ethics, Conduit for Action has a new story up. It's a good one. Headline here, Attorney General and ethics role previously rejected by voters. This is a good little bit of history here if you want to know where Arkansas has been in the past. We might be able to get a reasonable idea of where Arkansas is going. After a series of guilty pleas and a conviction, Arkansas politicians are finally waking up to the fact that Arkansas ethics laws and investigations of corruption are lacking. Recently, the Arkansas Senate adopted revisions to its code of ethics. Then Attorney General Leslie Rutledge announced she would hire a pair of investigators to investigate public corruption. Attorney General Rutledge's move illustrates how badly the legislature has restricted the Arkansas Ethics Commission by limiting its authority and limiting its staffing. Now, who is the Ethics Commission? Who appoints the attorneys that sit on the Ethics Commission? The governor. Otherwise, the Attorney General would probably not be trying to take on a role that the people previously rejected for the office of Attorney General. In early 1988, Governor Bill Clinton, you talk about the zenith of Arkansas corruption. We may be seeing the zenith, though, of Arkansas corruption now. In 1988, Governor Clinton called a special session to adopt ethics legislation. His bill, HB 1032, of the third extraordinary session of 1988 did not pass, and no ethics legislation managed to pass in the special session. After the defeat of the ethics proposal, Governor Clinton supported a shortened ethics proposal as a measure to be voted on by the people. The proposed initiated act deleted the parts of HB 1032 that would have applied to local officials and cut out creation of an ethics commission. The measure was adopted by the people in November 1988 as initiated Measure 1 of 1988. Seems like Bill wanted to have an ethics commission under his authority. Not having an ethics commission, the perception that an attorney general would be more sympathetic to politicians spurred another initiated act in 1990 to take away enforcement from the Attorney General and transfer the power to the Arkansas Ethics Commission to be created by the measure. This proposal was adopted by the people as initiated Measure 1 of 1990. The commission is not the strong agency envisioned by those who worked to create the commission and gave it the power to initiate investigations. According to a former commissioner, throughout the years, the commission has asked for more staff with only limited success. Also cited were changes in the ethics law that has weakened the commission's role. So here we are, back full circle to ethics investigations being made by the Attorney General's office, which was rejected by the people. Eventually, the problem of providing ethics investigations should be fixed by increasing the authority, independence, and staffing of the Ethics Commission. In the meantime, there seems to be plenty of corruption for the Attorney General, the feds, local prosecutors, and everyone to investigate, and still not get everything covered. Again, somebody on Facebook just said it would be a cattle drive if you start investigating these people. Conduit for Action writes, we would be remiss if we did not mention there is a concern that having investigations conducted by the Attorney General's office could be used as an excuse by the feds to punt corruption cases down to the state, causing delays and limiting continued investigations. Now, I kind of referenced that yesterday on the show and cautioned that might be the case. And once it gets down to the state level, you could have people who are a part of the system or have a lot to lose do their best to. I'm just saying. It's, in some cases, you have a good situation where the feds will check the states and vice versa. Kind of a check and balance, you know. Again, Conduit for Action writes, this could be used as an excuse by the feds to punt corruption cases down to the state, causing delays. That is a real possibility here, with the state now getting involved with their own investigations. Just Just a little caution. He goes on, if you are a person who enjoys conspiracy theories, here is one suggested to us. What if the feds follow policies which defer their investigations to state investigations, and then the state investigations get bogged down and save some Arkansas politicians from federal prosecution? Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, anyone? Some other Arkansas politician? We are not really into conspiracy theories, but we included this one for your entertainment. Then again, we can all wait around to see whether the conspiracy theorists finally get one right. And what's interesting is there's a little source for Roman numeral 4 here. And if you click on it, there's a little tiny image of I think, is that Barry Seal? Look at that right there. Scroll down, Joe. Let them see that. Scroll down. Look at that little image right there. Interesting. We got to take a break, folks. We are one day away from celebrating our independence. I'm very thankful for it. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning, some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Sharon on Facebook writes, I thought you said in an earlier broadcast, once the feds are involved, the state can't interfere. Did I misunderstand what you meant? Well, I mean, I've talked to some people that think that there might be a little bit of a dispute there, but you notice what the article says is that the feds use it as an excuse to punt. So anyway, I hope that's clear. I hope that makes it more clear if you read that the feds could use it as an excuse to punt it. Say, you guys handle this state of Arkansas, let you guys handle, and then the people now it's a state matter. I don't know. I do know the FBI has been running around here for years. And if you're these rank and file FBI agents who are, doing this great law enforcement work, I would imagine that you want justice to, come to some sort of reality for some of these guys. I mean, the amount of corruption out there, folks, is... I mean, I have been told by somebody that, it's... With some of these individuals, it's been described to me as a buffet of potential charges, and it's like, well, which one do we go with? Which charges do we pursue here? There's just so many, like a mega buffet, like one of those restaurants that's just like, we've got half a mile of buffet for you to choose from. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how many options are on the table here. Phone number 870-275-9799. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking with Mr. R.D. Hopper about this tire tax. I keep saying tire tax. It's now the tire regulations. The tax is in place, and now they've got to regulate it. That's where we are now, and it is unbelievable to hear the discussions that have been going on. It's really, really sad that I'm reading articles about these new regulations on tires and the environmental impact of water touching tires. And this is Republicans have won these massive majorities, and this is what we're talking about. Headline from Emily Walkenhorst. Plan advancing for change to Arkansas's scrap tire system. Another headline, state lawmakers study scrap tire proposal measure would implement the 2017 law. And so they're going back and forth here. This is from earlier today. This is the most recent article. Two state representatives asked a few questions yesterday of Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality officials, but none took objection to considering the regulation reviewed. Representative John Payton asked whether the regulation considered the remaining useful life of some tires that are removed from cars. Quote, I still hold the best way to recycle a tire is to wear it out. So this has to do with inspections. Basically the government's going to be showing up once a week to inspect these storage facilities. I think maybe they might be dropping that down to once a month instead of once a week. Anyway, we're going to be right back with Mr. R.D. Hopper of Sonny's Auto Salvage. He's going to have a few things to say about this. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere, folks.
Of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, folks, I wanted to talk about something that was on my mind. I want to talk about the concept that being comfortable is the death of the constitutional republic. Now, you might be asking how. Well, there's an author that I really love, a theologian that I love. He's since passed on. His name's Francis Schaeffer, and he said that really it's all about the selfish desire of personal peace and affluence, that this is a problem that we have, personal peace and affluence. So when people get comfortable with how things are around them, they pay attention less, they vote less, they're less likely to fight back until things get uncomfortable. What happens in between comfort and discomfort? Well, you have the government. When people don't pay attention to what the government is doing, it will get out of control, and it will grow far beyond the reach of where it was intended to be. And we see that. We're not where we were intended to be, where we were at our founding. I mean, case in point, you have the ruling on the cake, and the baker doesn't have to bake the cake. I mean, is it not obvious that our founding fathers would have agreed with the concept of religious freedom, so you're not forced to participate in religious ceremonies you disagree with? So what about the evidence of this? Well, take about the evidence of people who are comfortable, okay? Donald Trump. Trump is the wake-up call we as a country have been waiting for, the silent majority, if you will. So where have all these people been since Reagan? Well, I mean, Reagan was a conservative president, right? A lot of people said best president in the 20th century, in modern times. Well, the silent majority, we got comfortable. People got comfortable after Reagan. They got okay with how things were until the discomfort of the size and scope of government and the corrupt politicians became so overbearing for them to handle that they had to make a change, because it was obvious that the prospect to the people of this country, the prospect of a Hillary Clinton presidency, was widely believed it was going to make people's lives worse. How does this affect us here? How does this affect us here in the state of Arkansas? Well, we're way too comfortable as a state with the current affairs, the current status quo here in Arkansas. We're way too comfortable with. During the primaries this year, voter turnout was unnervingly low. Outside groups like Conduit News or Patriots of X746, outside of groups like that, you don't really see a whole lot of pushback against the way things are going, the way the government's going here in Arkansas. So how did it become like this? Well, the fault rests squarely on the shoulders of the people. If that sounds harsh, it's because it's supposed to. Arkansas and the Arkansas and the country as a whole are in a state they are in because we allowed this to happen. And the people aren't alone to blame. I mean, inevitably, it is the politicians that have taken advantage of the lack of public engagement to advance their corrupt policies, and we, the people, are suffering because of it. We elected the politicians in the first place, though. But back up to nationally, in Washington, D.C., we allowed the same people to stay in office for 40 years. These people have crafted policy for 40 years, and they've got a poor track record of keeping the people in mind as they craft that policy. They think the status and they think the elite special interests, they think about those people above all else, and they continue to build themselves up while suffocating the people. Does this happen in Arkansas? Absolutely. Do people pay attention? No, they don't. Happens in Arkansas, but maybe in slightly different ways. We've got term limits here. I mean, they're much larger since the convicted John Woods got his way. But when state legislators get subjected to the term limits, or when the governor deems them worthy, they get a nice state job, a reward for playing ball, for keeping the status quo going. Who will be the next to get a government job as a reward? Well, that's a good question. We should start a pool. In some cases, the politicians decide to create their own schemes, though, and get their colleagues to play along. Jake Files, John Woods, Mike and Neal, Rusty Cranford, Randall Shelton, Orrin Paris, and more built themselves up a nice little fraud scheme, and thankfully they got caught before they could steal any more of our money, the taxpayers' money. The bottom line is this: we as the people must wake up and pay attention, or else we will not recognize this country or this state that we love so much in 20 years. While we wait to see who else will be indicted or who else is going to plead guilty on corruption right here in Arkansas, let's commit ourselves to telling our family and our friends to wake up and pay attention. For Conduit News, I'm Paul Harrell. Hey, do you like this video? Do you want to...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2. Thank you so much for being with us, and happy Independence Day or pre-Independence Day celebration. A lot of people are really looking forward to this, and I certainly am as well. Hey, want to direct everybody before we get started this hour over at the Conduit News Facebook page. So at facebook.com/Conduit News, there is a survey up that's asking you, the consumer of all things Conduit, what you think about a lot of the content. What do you want to hear about? That sort of thing. So don't forget to take that survey. If you have it, if you're listening on Facebook right now, don't forget to take that survey. And it's you go over to Survey Monkey and go ahead and show them the survey, Joe. You get it pulled up there. You have feedback on Conduit News, Conduit for Action, Conduit for Commerce, and it says here if you complete it, you're going to be enter your email address at the end, and you have a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card, a free book, or a T-shirt. And, of course, your contact information is not used by outside third parties. So that's up at facebook.com/Conduit News. You can go there now and just fill that survey out for us and let us know what you think. What do you want to hear about? How do you listen? How do you consume the media that's out there? Hey, folks, they had a tire tax back in 2017. The Republicans passed it along with the Democrats to protect you from mosquitoes because tires hold water. Well, now that they had that tax increase, now they get to regulate. They're using the money to now regulate the tires. And here to talk about that is Sonny's Auto Salvage owner, who is Arkansas Patriot. Mr. R.D. Hopper is on the line. R.D., thanks for coming on, sir.
Hey, glad to. Always enjoy your show, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So have you been following these latest developments? I got 2 articles here from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. What are your thoughts on all this?
Very predictable. This is a large government high-tax program in order to get the state of Arkansas in the tire business and do it in an efficient manner. This is, I call it Arkansas Tire Care. And this Arkansas Tire Care program is spinning out of control already. Imagine, I'm in the auto recycling business and in the tracking business, so pretty easy to predict.
Gosh. So as I'm reading here, there's now a proposal that they're considering to increase oversight and reduce dumps. So it seems like the state is trying to regulate where tires are stored, and they don't want them in landfills anymore, or that sort of thing. Is that how you view this proposal?
Well, that's a premise that the premise it goes on is they're going to make this a very efficient system by increasing oversight and regulation, and number 2, reducing the accessibility to the consumer. But the heads of their own tire districts up there telling them that this is going to make tire dumping. Me and John Payton told them before this came out of committee, you're about to increase the number of tires in our community and make a bigger problem by passing this bill. And, of course, we're just uneducated small business owners, so we really didn't know what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yes, that's what it says. They want to increase oversight to make it more efficient and reduce the number of places you can drop tires. And yes, this was all done on the premises of not putting any more tires in landfill, and I guess it would make Arkansas a leader. They hurt absolutely nothing, but I don't know.
You think somebody's going to get a government contract to manage all this, or do you think they're eventually going to go private with these regulations?
Well, no, it really looks like right now it's all about more state jobs to reduce the unemployment in the state of Arkansas, the best I can tell. There may be federal grant money that's coming into the state that we're not hearing about tied to this. I don't know if the motivation's the federal grant money or ADEQ just thinks they need another 150 employees, or, but they've cut the number of places, districts that take tires in Arkansas. I believe it was from 10 to 12, and this bill takes it down to 5, where there's only 5 tire districts. And currently they have unmanned stations where people can just go by and drop off tires. But this system also creates an electronic tracking system where everybody that handles tires has to have a certified employee to handle the certified website to track every used tire in the state of Arkansas. So it's also something, it kills small businesses, because the small businesses that don't get a state tracking number and have a computer and have a certified state by the state of employee person to run it and have a certified equipment to haul it with a state sticker on it, it's going to put a lot of small tire shops out of business. So more state employees, more taxes, and put small businesses out of business. It sounds like a government program to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're talking with R.D. Hopper. He's owner of Sonny's Auto Salvage, and that's out of Jacksonville. R.D., as I'm reading these stories here, that this is getting some press about the coming regulations. I'm thinking about the rural environment. So is this going to make counties, for example, they have, like you said, these unmanned drop-off points, but it seems like the state is going to want those to be now staffed. So who staffs that? Who staffs that? Do these counties have to staff that?
Well, the district. See, these districts, by this 2017 Act 317, these districts, these 5 districts that they've cut it down to, they have to submit a business plan to the ADEQ. This is a state agency, all except one. One of them's private. This is, by and large, state agencies that have to run an efficient business, that have to be profitable, and then turn their profitable business plan into ADEQ. And ADEQ will look at the amount of electricity they use, the number of tires they process, and the cost per tire to process it in their district. So what they're trying to make is get Arkansas in the tire business and make it profitable. And so know that these districts have to submit a plan to tell how they're doing, much like you'd have to submit a business plan to a bank to get a loan. And I think the original bill said they had to be inspected weekly. And one thing that these tire districts are asking for, these tire districts are asking, I thought it's real good in these plans, they're asking for less regulation and less oversight. And they say that some of these regulations in 137 are too costly and unnecessary. So, boy, it almost sounds like the tire districts or the small businesses down there pleading with the state associations, but it's just
more freedom.
It's almost comical that it's the state districts down there pleading against another state agency to quit trying to make doing their job more expensive.
The White River District, this is reporting from the Gazette, the White River District also argued that the tire sites should not be required to have stormwater permits because tires are designed to be out in the weather and, quote, water touching waste tires is not an environmental hazard. The Gazette reports that the department responded by saying that water accumulations in trailers or containers of tires could create a breeding ground for vector-type diseases. So they're still sticking with this public safety angle that they've got to do this, RD, to save us from mosquitoes.
Yeah, what they're saying now, exactly right. Of course, me and John Payton told them this same thing before it came out of committee to go to front of the House and the Senate. That's exactly. I really love to hear a state agency repeating common sense. So basically, yes, the White River District manager tells them, yeah, it can rain on the tires just like raining on plastic. It doesn't contaminate anything. But it also says in that article that the ADEQ person said that tire collection agencies are often collects mosquitoes and creates a breeding ground. That's what they were trying not to do. So the state is going around all these counties and pulling all the tires in one place. But, you know, they really need to build the facilities indoors to keep them out of the rain. And they really need a computer system set in there so they can track them all in the computer system so they're not missing any money on their taxes. So they need indoor facilities for all their trailers. They need a state-certified employee with a computer standing at the door so when all the tires come in, you can track them in. And
what a joke.
What they're making things worse is what they're doing. They're making things worse, and that's exactly what me and John Payton tried to tell them, that you're about to make things worse. You know, I cut my tires, Paul. As soon as I get a tire that comes off of a car that's not resellable, I cut it. I cut it in 4 pieces. When I cut it in 4 pieces, it's harmless. They could cut these tires in 4 pieces in all the counties and throw them in a landfill. They would hurt nothing, but it would not reduce, you know, the unemployment rate in Arkansas, and may not get us to any federal grant money. I really don't know what the real motivation is.
But what is a stormwater permit? What is that? So you got to have a stormwater permit. What is it?
Yeah, I have a stormwater permit. Yeah, all businesses in Arkansas, or just about any business, has to have a stormwater permit. I have a permit. I collect water twice a year. I send the water into the state to have it inspected by the state, and I have a best practices, and the permit has the best practices. It says that I'm going to, you know, suck all my Freon out, drain all the oil out of the cars. It tells how many hard surfaces you've got on your property and how much grass you've got. So it's like a water runoff. And so, yeah, most all businesses, gas stations have to have a water permit. But, you know, they're expensive. You have to pay an engineer to come in and help you do it. Then it has to be updated on a regular basis. So you've got a state agency that's trying to get out from under doing something that all the businesses in Arkansas are already taxed to do currently.
Wow. And yeah, they're trying to say we don't want to have to have a stormwater permit because tires are designed.
They don't need one.
I know, yeah, because tires are made of rubber and water doesn't hurt anything. You know, so
yeah, just like the plastic cup you drink out of, it hurts nothing. You could have a rubber drinking cup. It would be just fine. Rubber, it doesn't emit anything into the water. So the White River District. They're exactly right. It doesn't. But they don't need one. But hey, you know, common sense need has nothing to do with state government.
This is a big deal. I think you know, we're basically reaping what was sowed. They've been collecting the tax, and now here comes the regulations. And you know, like you said, I mean, do you think? I mean, I hope that they weren't listening just now, RD, about building like actual buildings to keep the tires, like these giant Indiana Jones style warehouses where we're just going to have tires from floor to ceiling. I mean, I'd rather us build some more prisons than have to build those types of facilities.
Yeah, we need them to protect us from mosquitoes, but they're making a problem that really through negligence. There was a few tire dumps in the state of Arkansas, but it was another way to form a new agency. But you know, in the same article, Paul, you know, the gentleman from Pulaski County said, you know, the only way to implement this efficiently is to bring in private businesses and contractors. But hey, I travel around to other states. You know, I go to other states to the recycling conventions. In many states, have private businesses handling the used tires and doing it profitably. And these poor guys, like I think of the poor people up there in Clarksville that's getting put in jail because they can't run a efficient government or getting arrested. They went and bought some tire cutting machines and was going to try to make a sellable product out of it to make it viable. So they took state money, and I think that's what all of them was going to do. But after they spent all the money on the equipment and gathered up, I don't know, 1 million tires, they couldn't find a market for it. So now the state has 600,000 tires and no market to sell them in.
It says this is just ridiculous, but yeah, on your point on the Pulaski, it says the Regional Recycling and Waste Reduction District in Pulaski County requested that nonprofit corporations in Arkansas whose mission are dedicated to recycling-related programs should be eligible to receive incentive grants. So there you go. I mean, that's where it's going. Is somebody's going to get rich on managing this mess that they've created. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly. And the sad thing in this tax, I've said at the beginning, this is a tire removal tax and an installation fee, and they're getting part of it right now, but they're not getting all of it. It taxes people that have to buy used tires or people that can't afford a new set of tires to last them 4 or 5 years. This tax hits the poorest people in the state. It hits college students and minimum wage people that are trying to get back and forth to work. If somebody buys a set of tires, a new set of Michelins that lasts them 4 or 5 years, they're not going to pay this tax very often. But all this government agency and all these new employees, $70,000 a year jobs, are being supported by the poorest people in the state. And
that's sad.
And it's putting out of business the smallest businesses in the state. They can't buy computers and comply with it. So, big business and government's got to love it, but this bill really hits the people that can take it to least.
R.D. Hopper, I appreciate it, owner of Sonny's Auto Salvage. Be safe, sir. Have a great Independence Day.
All right. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I want to remind everybody that the Republican Party of Arkansas, they have a supermajority in the House of Representatives out of 100 members. And out of 35 members in the Senate, they have almost a supermajority in the upper chamber. And we're talking about regulating tires from the cradle to the grave. Back in just a moment.
Yeah. I think I'm right. This tastes just like Obamacare.
No. Actually, it's the new private option. I call this fantastic new dish Arkansas Works.
That's odd, because it looks and tastes just like Obamacare.
Why do you always have to be so critical? I'm in here cooking, trying to do something nice for the family.
Because I thought we talked about this before. I don't like Obamacare.
You just need to give it another chance.
So you admit it's the same?
No, it's different. It's Arkansas Works.
Let me ask you something. Does it smell like Obamacare?
Yes.
Does it taste like Obamacare?
I suppose so.
Are you using the same ingredients to make it as you used to make Obamacare?
Yes.
Then how is your so-called new dish, Arkansas Works, not Obamacare?
Well, let me explain, honey. You will remember, recently, I had my name legally changed at your request, right?
Yes, I know. You had it changed from Duke to Rover. I dislike the name Duke, and I think Rover sounds so much more personally responsible.
Well, now that I'm called Rover instead of Duke, I believe I can take the same recipe and ingredients and create a dish with the same smell and taste from before.
Okay.
And because of my name change, you will love it.
I'm not buying it. And I just realized the name Duke and Rover are both common names for dogs.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Oh, my goodness. So we have people on Facebook. We have Paula writing, "The rich just keep getting richer." We have, let's see here. Maybe the Marble Palace is where mosquitoes are being hatched. Is that because, Gene, is that because mosquitoes are blood suckers? And that's what it feels like with these, all these taxes and everything, for sure. Just so you know, the tire tax, the bill that has now spawned the regulations that they're now debating on what to do with them, and basically a big government program to manage all of this. It was filed by Republican State Representative Lanny Fite. This was his signature bill. This is what he pushed through back in the 2017 session. Is anyone out there looking forward to that 2019 session? I mean, my goodness. After the 2017 session with the tire tax, the internet tax, the gas tax. Those ideas were defeated, the internet tax and the gas tax. But, you can rest assured those are going to be back now, especially with the Supreme Court ruling that Arkansas has the authority to tax a business in another state and require them to pay us for selling to you and me. You can bet that it's going to be an interesting 2019 session. Very, very interesting, to say the least. Want to remind everybody once again, if you can, we have a survey where we're entering you to win a $25 gift card from Amazon, a book. You can get also a free book or a T-shirt. But you got to go to Facebook.com. If you've never been to the Conduit News Facebook page, Facebook.com/Conduit News, you can like us while you're there. That would be helpful. Also, subscribe to receive notifications when the Facebook live video goes up. But while you're there, there's a survey, and we want you to click on that survey. We want you to take it where we can get a little bit more information about your preferences. And we're not selling them to third parties like, some of the other guys. We just want to know, how often do you listen to Conduit News? We want to know things like, well, where do you get your other news from? What mediums do you use? Do you use television, radio? Is it mostly on the internet? And also, what topics do you want to hear? Are you most satisfied? Are you more satisfied with state government, or are you more satisfied with the federal government? These are questions that we want you to answer. It's up right now at Facebook.com/Conduit News. We're going to be right back. Mr. Dan Wass going to talk a little bit about good guys with guns. Good gun, bad guy. We'll talk about that and Independence Day when we come back.
Would they arrest people? It was very clear. I can tell you what my prosecutor said. we were around during the time this law changed. We know the intent of the laws, and it'd basically be foolish if they did that, and they can read it.
Yeah.
So why is our AG having a problem?
I don't know, and that brings me to my next conclusion. A couple of times in this letter, she says that that legislative clarification is certainly warranted, and that's very scary to me because she is essentially giving the legislature a softball, and to try to step up and try to correct something that doesn't need correcting. It just needs people to admit what the law is, and that's what's frustrating because.
Wait, Paul.
Go ahead.
I have to correct you there. She's the Attorney General. She's not a legislator. She's not a lawmaker. And we are the lawmakers. And so since she has put a personal opinion there, and that's not a legal opinion, that's not the law. And that is not I think that should have been left out of her legal opinion, and that it was very clear the first parts of that letter was the answer to the question. If there was if we have had an issue of wrongful arrest, then we would be seeing some, or if we saw problems in those arrests, if we started seeing issues, then we would have some actual case laws there that we could use for, something she could cite. She doesn't have that. And she didn't do that. So I have to correct
No, I appreciate that. Yeah,
she doesn't have that.
Yeah, her saying legislative clarification is needed is an opinion that is separate from any analysis of what the statute is saying here. It's deviating from what your original question was. But my fear is, Linda, and we're talking with Senator Linda Colin Smith, is that this is now opening a Pandora's box. I don't trust especially after last session with what happened with the enhanced carry bill and how that turned into just absolutely more regulations and more red tape, more money to the government to exercise their Second Amendment rights. If they try to clarify Act 746 or the code that allows people now to open carry, and now we have people admitting that there is no penalty for carrying a weapon without a permission slip from the government, if they try to clarify it, they're going to strip us of our rights. That's the only way they can go. To clarify it would be to strip us of our Second Amendment rights in the current law. Do you agree?
I agree that what you might be seeing here is that the Attorney General possibly could be following.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is our last long segment of the day before Independence Day celebration festivities begin for 2018. Really excited about it. Again, I have a beef brisket, a 19-pound brisket in my refrigerator that is marinating right now, and I'm going to get to cooking that here probably in a couple hours. I'm excited about it. Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. Via video remote, we've got Mr. Dan Wass with us. Dan, welcome, sir. Thanks so much for being with us.
Paul, how are you? It's great to
Let's
be
see here.
on
Hang on. We're trying to get your audio queued up. Can you hear me, Dan?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I think we're up and live. We're going good. Now, you are the author, we've had you on before, of Good Gun, Bad Guy. And obviously, you've also got a sequel out. You've got Good Gun, Bad Guy 2, Destroying the Anti-Gun Narrative. How's that second book being received?
Fantastic. I couldn't be happier. The response from gun owners especially has been absolutely overwhelming, and the support has been incredible. And but of course we'll get some of the anti-gunners kicking and screaming, and I guess that's just all part of the fun.
Yeah, it's definitely is that seems to be what's going on right now. I mean, there's still this on the left, this concept. I was watching some of this Ted Nugent interview the other day. I mean, he is just so much fun to watch. When it comes and listening to his arguments about, the left really has a goal of disarming the public. That's really what their goal is, right?
Oh, definitely. But the problem is, people ask me, what's the divide? Why such a divide in the country? And I think it's because the Democrats are no longer sitting at the popular table. I remember the popular table, maybe in school. I don't know about you, but I was never invited to sit at it. But what happened, this is why we have all these, crazy celebrities, the Susan Sarandons, the Madonnas, and some of the radical left activist senators like Kirsten Gillibrand. They're all coming out and they're furious because Donald Trump has single-handedly kicked the Democrats out of the popular table and sent them to the mop closet.
Yeah, he really has. And they still haven't gotten the message. I feel like on everything, speaking just generally about Donald Trump and what he does, it seems like everything they attempt to do to him, whether it's, the next narrative shift in the mainstream media, it seems like it always backfires on them. I know we're talking about guns, no pun intended there.
No, that's all right. And it's true, because this is where the gun conversation starts. It's because everything that they want to do is wrong for this country. And they want to do it just because that's what they've always done. And I think a lot of them, they just don't want to admit that they're wrong. But, a perfect example is the way we have now taken the fake news and turned them into the bastard child of the media. And for all rights and purposes, it's true, and they should be there. But they took a long time lying and deceiving people on everything from all sorts of politics to the gun conversation, which is what I talk about. And just the conversation of guns brings us into this whole divide that we have in our country between the left and the right.
Yeah, and you talk about the lies. Joe, what was that statistic that they always talk about? How the shooting statistics, that are just so, there's there's a shooting every 10 seconds or a school shooting every 10 seconds. Yeah. Anyway, they put, I'm exaggerating, but they put these statistics out that are just can be proven false. And then, of course, anytime there is an actual good guy, with a gun that stops, they don't cover that at all. It's, they don't promote the heroism. They don't promote any of that.
Well, there was a report that was shelved since the 90s. And it was a CDC report that they didn't want getting out. And that report showed that guns are used 2.5 million times per year on average to save lives rather than take them. So that was just released. So the truth is, where you have more concealed carry, you have less crime and people are safer. Where you have, the restrictions in the gun-free zones and all the liberal progressive gun policies, that's where people are getting killed. Gun-free zones like our schools, for instance. These people, they want to keep, there was just read an article. There was a story how, I think it was the New York Times, is now arming, they're using armed guards outside of their newspaper, studios or newspaper buildings. But, those same people will still promote gun-free zones at our schools. And, that's very unsafe. It's very dangerous. And it's very irresponsible on behalf of the anti-gunners.
Yeah, it's hypocritical. It's very similar to these celebrities with the kids at the border and all this other stuff, and how they're demagoguing it. They're writing these tweets. They're virtue signaling tweets from their Beverly Hills homes with walls around them, with locks on their doors, with armed guards. It's like, can you not see the hypocrisy here? You want to secure your house, but we don't want to secure the country. Now, speaking of securing the country, we're talking with Dan Wasson. He is the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. You can also go to goodgunbadguy.net to check out all of his stuff, and I would encourage you to do so. back in the 18th century, back in 1776, I mean, we're getting ready to celebrate Independence Day. I mean, that document, we could talk about it for days, but one of the things that these men did, Dan, was they traded their security, the security of the British Empire, the most powerful empire at the time. They traded that for liberty. And right now we're doing the opposite in many ways, but if our founding fathers didn't have access to guns, I mean, we would not be having the conversation that we're having today.
Exactly. It was because of guns that we were able to defeat the British Army. And the 13 colonies got together and said, hey, we are now declaring that we are, independent. And it was a beautiful thing. And we celebrate it with barbecues. But the truth is, had it not been for those guys, we'd be speaking with a bloody accent.
Yeah, we really would. We celebrate it with barbecues. We celebrate it with fireworks. I would say, what we really do need to do, and I try to encourage this at the events, is to actually to get the document out and read what they were talking about. Read what it actually says about the right of the people to alter or abolish after a long train of abuses and usurpations. And it's just incredible today. And I mentioned this, about trading our security for liberty. And if the left has their way today with their gun debates and what they want to do, I mean, they would literally have us helpless. They would have us disarmed and just completely dependent on the government for that security, instead of relying on ourselves to have the human right. Talk about it. I mean, the right of the Second Amendment is a human right of self-defense, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And here's the thing. I think a lot of people are getting the terms rights and privileges mixed up. Privileges are given to you. Privileges can be taken away. Rights are not. Rights are inherent. And we have people in our country who say all the time, well, I support your right to keep and bear arms, but I think we need common sense gun restrictions. Well, it's impossible to support my right to keep and bear arms while restricting my right to keep and bear arms. But they're being conditioned in this country to view rights as privileges. And it's a scary thing.
Yeah. I mean, if we treated the First Amendment the way we treat the Second Amendment, and this is a foot in the door. I mean, when you for example, I know people somehow they feel confident when the government gives them a permit, to carry, or what we call here a permission slip. Pay the government money and take this course, and then they'll sell your right back to you. But what you said, we're being conditioned. It's a foot in the door mentality. It's one step away for, maybe you need a license to have your Fourth Amendment, from illegal seizures and searches. Maybe you need to take a class to make sure you know how to protect your papers, or maybe you need to go get a permit to, to have your right to religious freedom. I mean, it really is a slippery slope.
Yeah, not to defend yourself. I mean, defending life is the most important thing. And to just the idea that people in our country will fight against us to try to remove that right is astonishing to me. But we definitely have a split of ideology in this country. And on the left, it looks like we have people who want rules, like you mentioned, rules, and they want rules and regulations and restrictions and laws, because to them that creates a safe environment. It's a controlled, structured environment for them, and they like that. On the right, we have people who want freedom and who are willing to take responsibility for our failures and our mistakes, but we also will reap our own rewards. So we have that split. And but here's the thing: aside from the people at the top who do want to control everybody, I don't think the average left winger, if you want to call them that, the average liberal progressive, I don't think, the person next door, the person you see in the grocery store, the average people in our lives that are on the left, I don't think they want to control you as much as they like being controlled because it feels safe to them.
That is a really, I would agree with that 100%. I think I think it's just the fact that they find such a security in the government legitimizing their existence in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it's a different mentality. I mean, I think the American psyche it was certainly one way for the first 100 years of our existence. It was very much a, no, leave me alone. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to grab and take hold of my future. And there's still a lot of people out there that are doing that, or, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and that sort of thing. There's still that dream is still alive, but there are more of us who really just, like you said, yeah, I would agree with that statement 100%. There is, comfort in the supposed security of a government. But here's the thing. They really can't deliver what they're selling, can they? I mean, the government cannot actually deliver on this total security that they're promising.
Of course not. But when you're able to give up your rights and let government control or whoever, your parents, your professor, your boss, when you let other people control your life, what you're also doing is you're giving up personal responsibility. And that's the worst part, because now these people who want rules and laws and regulations don't have any personal responsibility, because now they can blame everything on someone else. Well, I couldn't see the stop sign because the tree was in the way. That's the city's fault. Or, as they're texting while they're walking across a busy intersection, it's not my responsibility anymore to look left and right to make sure cars are coming. As long as that street light tells me I can go, it's a way of giving up personal responsibility. And it's a terrible thing, because the more people give up responsibility, the more they're going to need government control, and they're going to need government regulations and rules. It's a really scary slope that they're sliding down.
Look, I know on the national side of things, Dan, things are looking better than they would have if Hillary Clinton was in office. I mean, we certainly know that. But are you confident that conservatives on the right are being successful in getting their message out to educate the public? Is that, is there anything we need to be doing different, in your opinion?
Well, that's a great question. And yeah, and I think we could get our message out better. And I think conversations like the one you and I are having right now are shining a light on a lot of this stuff. We don't have the big, huge media that they do on the left, although that's slowly falling apart for them. We have a lot of these grassroots media outlets, which is great because you can't stop them. And they may not have the reach, but you just can't stop them because they're popping up all over the place. And I think we need to get our message clear, and we do need to get it out. There's a hashtag walk away right now. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's Democrats that are actually walking away from the Democrat Party because they're starting to see just how corrupt things are with respect to the way they mislead people. So I think our message is getting out, and thank God for Donald Trump, who's really saying it without any hesitation.
Yeah, you're right, and that hashtag is really powerful. Hashtag walk away. You guys need to check that out on Twitter if you haven't. Some really powerful stories of people who said, I voted Democrat my whole life, and but then, and it'll be really, it's interesting. Some of their stories are minute. It's like something happened that just kind of, and then they started just being skeptical. It's like there's this healthy American skepticism that I always talk about when it comes to, this is an American attitude to be skeptical of those in power. And it just it only takes a spark for somebody to be like, I don't know if the media is objective. I think maybe they are intentionally misleading me into a predetermined conclusion they want me to have, and they're trying to control me. And so, yeah, people are figuring it out. And then you have a lot of people, Dan, who are so miserable on the left because they're constantly watching CNN and MSNBC, and they're having to just turn it off for a while. Or they have these, these. It's almost like some of them need therapy, and some people on Twitter are like, "Hey, just don't watch CNN for a week and see if you feel better, and then maybe, check out a different outlet and actually get the truth."
Yeah, I agree. I think they should stop. I mean, if for nothing else, their own mental health. But that's what they're doing, and I think that's the only thing they have left, is to just keep doubling down and keep fighting what they consider the good fight. It's actually the bad fight.
Yeah, I know I got to let you go, but I want to once again. It's a good guy, bad gun. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Almost.
Good gun. Yeah, good gun, bad guy. So good gun, bad guy. Go to goodgunbadguy.net. And it's Dan Wass, and I understand you're going to be on the radio in Alabama coming up here in about 10 minutes.
I'm going right now, but before I do, I have to say hi to my friend Levita Jones.
All right, there, and I think she's certainly listening right now on Facebook. So, hey, Dan, I appreciate it, sir. I don't want to do this again, and you have a happy Independence Day.
Hey, thanks, Paul. You too. Love coming on your show. Let's do it again.
All righty, yes, sir. Folks, we are going to take a break, and we do appreciate you guys out there listening. Hey, feel free. You can sound off, and you can give me a text message. It's 870-275-9799. Or right now, Facebook.com/Conduit News. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I want to say hi to Dorothy Crockett, who is listening on our Facebook page. Appreciate you, Dorothy, and your commitment to liberty. Let's see here. Tim on Facebook writing, most of the news isn't news, it's propaganda. If you think this is new, research William Randolph Hearst. Tim, that is excellent advice. We have a very smart audience, folks. Instead of conceal carry, how about just simply, I don't know what that is. Asking citizens carrying weapons. There's a typo there, and I can't make that word out. Gary on Facebook says, rights and privileges, same difference. I think he's joking. We have Bob on Facebook saying, if I were a tyrant, I wouldn't want the citizens to have guns. Tim again writes, permits are the original infringement on Second Amendment rights. Wayne on Facebook, both oligarch and tyrant mistrust the people and therefore deprive them of their arms. That's a quote from Aristotle. Both oligarch and tyrant mistrust the people and therefore deprive them of their arms. Or it's at least attributed to Aristotle. That's pretty good stuff. I think it's fitting that we're having these conversations, both broad and specific, about our individual rights, our individual freedoms that do not come from government, but are given to us by God. And the government that we set up secures those liberties by assuming that man, left to his own devices, will try to dominate other men and use the government and the force of government to do it. That is what we are celebrating. If anything, tomorrow we're celebrating the recognition of the fallibility of man, of our state, of our tendency to want to dominate others. And we said, we know that's going to be the tendency. So here's the government we're going to set up. We're going to set up a government that recognizes freedoms that exist naturally, that are self-evident truths. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those are your guarantees. You want guarantees? You don't have a guarantee of outcome, but those are your guarantees. We're going to have a government that leaves you alone and allows you to be free. By saying the law says the government can do these things. They're called enumerated powers. This was the Constitution that later followed. And then we have the 10th Amendment that says, you know what, if it's not specifically delegated to the federal government, then everything else is reserved to the states or to the people. I mean, it was a genius system. It was a system that was started and founded in the humility of the recognition of God by saying we are not the arbiter of rights. God is. That is founding a country in submission and humility to the divine sovereign. And other countries don't do that. Okay? They put their faith in monarchs or the largest standing armies or whatever. But America was different. And that is why that was the beginning of what led to what we now call American exceptionalism, which President Obama so desperately tried to eradicate from the American vocabulary. I want to wish you, on behalf of Conduit News Radio and everybody here, I want to wish you guys listening a happy Independence Day. And I hope that you and your family will be blessed tomorrow as you celebrate this unique holiday together. Unique based on world tendencies and standards. Anyway, we'll see you on Thursday. Arkansas, be safe.